determine the function of the graph. So you need to know the standard function of the trig function. For example, this is a standard sine function. It is an odd function because they respect to the origin. So the positive sine function, they have that increasing interval, increasing curve passing through the zero. And the one complete rotation, which is 1 period, the standard size of the standard sine function, 1 period has a 2 pi. P is 2 pi. Same as the cosine function, this is a positive cosine function. So the complete one rotation, which is a 1 period with the cosine function, is 2 pi as well. The standard form of the sine and cosine, they put a times sine bx or a times cosine bx. A is the amplitude, right? That is the size of the curve, how far, how high or how low on your y-axis. That is the amplitude. B is the number of the frequency within the 1 period. They might frequent very many times within the 1 period, or just frequent one complete rotation, which is one curve up, another curve down. This is a standard period within the 1 rotation. So that would be the 2 pi. They might have within the 2 pi, they frequent many times. So that's the reason why we need to find a B. So now we look at this graph, determine the function is a positive or negative first. If you look at this graph, I know it's a sine function because it respects to the origin on that point 0. So we know this is a sine, positive sine function. In front of the sine, we need to determine the amplitude. So the amplitude is getting from how high, which is the peak of the curve on the positive y-axis, and the peak of the curve on the negative y-axis. So because the middle line of this graph is a 0, so the middle line is 0. That indicate this function there's no vertical translate with this function. So that's why their middle line stays at x equals 0. X equals 0. So look at the highest point on the y, this is a phi. The lowest point on the y is a negative phi, so we know the amplitude is phi. And because this is a positive sign, so we just put a positive phi sign, but now we need to determine the b value. So finding the b value, you need to determine the 1 period. Where is the 1 period? The starting point to the end point. So the 1 complete rotation of this graph, they begin here, stop at here. So this is 1 complete rotation, 1 up curve, 1 down curve. So from here to here, this is a 1 period. So 1 period. If you look at the distance of the 1 period, it's pi. So write down the formula. P is equal to pi over B if they change the frequency within the period. So P, we know is a pi. So we take the 2 pi divided by unknown B. So for sure, B must be equal 2. So now we can write down the function of this graph. So the function of this graph is phi multiplied sine 2x. Now we look at this one. Determine the plane function of the graph. I know this is a cosine function because the curve respect to the y value, right? So this is a cosine. The standard cosine function, they should begin with a curve on the positive y and passing to x-axis has a, and then go back to the positive y to complete the one rotation or one cycle. But this one has an upside down direction. So we know this is a negative cosine function. So I put down the negative sign here, cosine. We need to determine the amplitude. So same here, the midline is a 0. So that means the graph didn't vertical translate. So we look at the highest peak on the y, which is 4. The lowest peak on the y is a negative 4. So we know the amplitude is 4. So this negative sign just tells us the function is across x-axis. So which is there's a reflection and the amplitude is 4. We need to determine the b value again here. So you need to find from where to where is that one complete period. So begin here and then stop at here. So from here up to here, this would be the one complete period, right? One complete cycle. So we call this as a period. So if you look at the horizontal axis, one complete period would be pi. So same here, put down the pi. This is p. It's equal to pi over b. So we don't know the b. We want to solve for b. Again, b is equal to as well. So we just replace b with 2. So the function of this graph will be negative 4 multiplied cosine 2x. Again, this negative sign just indicate the graph across x-axis, which is there's a reflection on x-axis.